Imagine you're in a meeting. There's someone at the table, confident, loud, certain about everything. They speak without hesitation, never second-guess themselves. Everyone else glances around, wondering if they missed something. But here's what the science tells us: that person, in all likelihood, is the least qualified person in the room. And they have absolutely no idea. This is the Dunning-Kruger Effect, one of the most unsettling discoveries in modern psychology. Named after David Dunning and Justin Kruger, two Cornell psychologists who published their landmark study in 1999, this cognitive bias reveals something deeply uncomfortable about the human mind. Incompetence doesn't just fail to recognize itself. It actively prevents you from seeing it. The original study is deceptively simple. Dunning and Kruger gave participants tests in 3 domains: logical reasoning, grammar, and humor. They then asked each participant to estimate how well they performed compared to others. The results were stunning. Those who scored in the bottom quarter consistently believed they were above average. Not slightly above average. Dramatically above average. Think about what that means. The people who understood the least were the most confident they understood everything. They couldn't see their own gaps because to see a gap in your knowledge, you need enough knowledge to recognize the gap exists. It's a trap with no obvious exit. The worse you are at something, the less equipped you are to know how bad you are. Dunning himself described it this way: incompetence robs people of the metacognitive ability to see their own incompetence. Metacognition is thinking about your own thinking, the mental process that lets you evaluate how well you're reasoning. Without a baseline of skill, that self-monitoring system simply doesn't function properly. The signal exists. The receiver is broken. And the flip side is just as strange. The people who scored highest on the tests consistently underestimated their performance. Experts who genuinely understood logical reasoning assumed the problems were easy for everyone. They thought everyone could do what they did. This phenomenon, where high performers believe they're less impressive than they actually are, has since been linked to what many call imposter syndrome. Here's a real-world scenario you might recognize. A new employee joins a company. In the first week, they're brimming with ideas. Everything seems clear to them. They suggest changes to processes that have been in place for years. They're certain the veterans are doing it wrong. Fast forward 6 months, now they understand the complexity. Now they second-guess every recommendation. That early confidence wasn't wisdom. It was ignorance in disguise. The political arena may be the most visible stage for this effect. Research published in the journal Political Psychology found that people with the least political knowledge were the most overconfident in their political opinions. They were also the least likely to seek out new information. Why would you look for answers when you're already certain you have them? The Dunning-Kruger effect creates an intellectual closed loop. Social media has made this worse in ways Dunning and Kruger couldn't have imagined in 1999. Platforms built around engagement reward confident declarations over nuanced uncertainty. Someone saying, "I don't know, it's complicated," gets scrolled past. Someone saying, "Here's the truth they're hiding from you," gets shared 1,000 times. The algorithm doesn't distinguish between certainty and accuracy. Confidence is the currency. Competence is irrelevant. The medical world offers some of the most dangerous examples. A 2015 study published in JAMA found that patients who rated their own health as excellent were significantly more likely to delay seeking medical care even when objective symptoms indicated otherwise. The most medically uninformed patients were the most resistant to professional guidance. The stakes shift from awkward to life-threatening. Now you might be thinking, "I understand this bias. I can spot it in others. I wouldn't fall for it." And right there, that thought, that particular feeling of clarity, is exactly where it starts. The Dunning-Kruger effect doesn't announce itself. It never does. It operates below the level of self-reflection, which is precisely what makes it so effective as a cognitive trap. Research following up on the original study has confirmed the effect is robust across cultures and disciplines. A 2017 meta-analysis published in Psychological Science examined over 90 studies and found the Dunning-Kruger pattern holds in domains ranging from chess to financial literacy to musical ability. This isn't a Western bias or an American quirk. This is how human brains are wired. There's a graph that's become famous in psychology circles. On the x-axis, increasing knowledge and skill. On the y-axis, confidence. The line goes up sharply at the beginning, peak overconfidence. Then it plunges into what researchers call the valley of despair. As you learn more, you realize how much you don't know. Most people give up here. The ones who push through emerge on the other side, genuinely skilled, and appropriately humble. The valley of despair is the critical threshold. It's where medical students panic before exams they'll eventually ace. Where programmers stare at broken code wondering if they'll ever understand it. Where writers read masterworks and feel fraudulent. This discomfort isn't failure, it's evidence of growth. The people who feel the most incompetent in complex fields are often the ones learning the fastest. But here's where it gets psychologically dark. Because the valley of despair is uncomfortable, many people retreat back to the peak of overconfidence. They stop learning just past the point where they realize they're not as good as they thought. They find communities that reinforce their initial certainty. They reject new information that would deepen their understanding. Ignorance, in this way, becomes a choice even if an unconscious one. Educational researcher John Hattie spent 15 years analyzing 800 meta-analyses covering over 80 million students. One of his most troubling findings: students who believe they're performing well but aren't are the hardest to teach. Their misplaced confidence acts as armor against learning. You can't fill a cup that believes it's already full. The illusion of knowledge is the most effective barrier to actual knowledge. Corporations have started designing around this effect. Some companies now use structured pre-mortem exercises before launching projects, imagining the project has failed and working backward to identify why. This technique forces even the most confident participants to consider their blind spots. It's essentially a built-in mechanism to counteract the bias. It works, but only when leadership enforces it. Overconfident leaders often skip it entirely. There's a particularly sinister application in persuasion and manipulation. Con artists, cult leaders, and demagogues have long understood intuitively what Dunning and Kruger proved scientifically, that people who don't know much are easiest to convince. The less someone understands a topic, the more susceptible they are to confident-sounding authority figures. Exploiting the Dunning-Kruger effect isn't a modern invention. It's an ancient tool. So how do you escape this trap? The first step is genuinely uncomfortable. Actively seek out what you don't know. Not to confirm your existing views, but to challenge them. Seek out experts who disagree with you. Read material that contradicts your current position. The goal isn't to abandon your views, it's to stress test them. Only ideas that survive scrutiny deserve your confidence. Second, pay attention to how you feel when you're challenged. Defensive discomfort is often a signal that you're protecting a belief rather than examining it. Intellectual curiosity and defensiveness cannot fully coexist. When you feel the urge to dismiss a counterargument rather than engage with it, that's your cognitive immune system trying to protect your existing worldview. Notice it. That noticing is the beginning of metacognition. Third, find someone who genuinely knows more than you about a topic you think you understand. Not to be humiliated, but to map the contours of your own ignorance. Dunning himself recommends this as the most effective antidote. Exposure to genuine expertise recalibrates your internal confidence meter. It's not about feeling stupid. It's about becoming accurate in your self-assessment. The most unsettling question Dunning-Kruger raises isn't about other people. It's about you. Right now. In some domain of your life, career, relationships, politics, health, you are likely operating with overconfidence. The area where you feel most certain without having tested that certainty is the most dangerous. That certainty isn't knowledge. It may be the most reliable signal of ignorance you possess. David Dunning, decades after his original study, noted something that stuck with him: the most dangerous cases weren't the overtly arrogant. They were the pleasant, friendly, earnest people who were simply wrong and had no mechanism to discover it. They weren't malicious. They were trapped. And in a world where decisions made by the uninformed affect millions of others, that trap has consequences far beyond the individual. The Dunning-Kruger effect is not a diagnosis of stupidity. It's a description of the universal human tendency that affects everyone across every domain. The experts who fear it most are the most protected from it. The people who've never heard of it are the most vulnerable. Which means that simply knowing it exists, genuinely sitting with its implications, is the most powerful inoculation available. Use it wisely.